Welcome back to Movies TV Mad. You can follow me on Twitter at Movies TV Mad. This is a channel for people who love movies and love television, but especially DC, Doctor Who, etc, etc. This is not for bloggers. This is not for box office analysts. This is for people with a pure passion for storytelling and escapism. And welcome to Thursday's edition of the Movies TV Mad Daily. So, James Gunn and the future of DC after the Suicide Squad, an article by Richard Newby. The filmmaker who has a knack for treating comic book characters with emotional sincerity will be back with DC, but what will he tackle? James Gunn has made his mark and given his heart to the DCEU with the Suicide Squad. The filmmaker brought his trademark emotional sensibilities, love for more outlandish comic book ideas, and a new energy to a cinematic universe still navigating its path forward. Even as the DCEU lines up its future projects and attempts greater connectivity. Well done, Richard. If this was a Screen Rant article, they'd be telling you they're looking to do a future of self-contained movies, but Richard knows what's going on, as I do. Great journalism, Richard. Still navigating its path forward, even as the DCEU lines up its future projects and attempts for greater connectivity while also exploring the multiverse, one thing seems certain. Gunn will be playing in the world of DC properties for some time to come, and for me personally, and for some of you, this is really good news. The Suicide Squad spin-off series Peacemaker, starring John Cena, is set to hit HBO Max early next year, and there have been teases of other projects to come. At the premiere of the Suicide Squad, DC Films president Walter Hamada said he'll be back. We have more stuff planned. Even after the pandemic saddled opening weekend box office results for the Suicide Squad, the film was a clear win for the brand. What more? This is just brilliant journalism, Richard. Yeah, not that this is bad news, this is a disaster for the DCEU, but it's a clear win for the brand. Because guess what? It's a great movie. We know the Delta variant is terrible in America now. That is the reality. Whatever your agenda is. Well done, Richard. Opening the door for new characters, concepts and stories. The big question is, what will Gunn tackle next? The thing that makes Gunn such a fascinating filmmaker who has proved integral to both the MCU and the DCEU is that he doesn't shy away from the fictional elements that make comic books what they are. For him, grounded comes in the form of emotional sincerity instead of overly complicated explanations as to how Ratcatcher 2's Daniel Melchior technology works or working overtime to translate every utterance of I Am Groot to an audience that already gets it. In a superhero movie space where regardless of the quality of the film, it still feels like some filmmakers are embarrassed by the source material. This is even better journalism, Richard. Richard is killing this fucking article, right? Killing it in a positive way. Wow, it's true. It's true. Some of them just seem ashamed of the comic book genre and they try and bring more nuance to it, and sometimes nuance isn't needed. And only look at it for imagery or to try too hard to make the magic of comics feel like a science project in order to make certain themes land. Gunn stands apart. This is so much the case that when the Suicide Squad introduces a political coup that interrogates America's culpability in foreign policies, and the starfish kaiju that shoots replicas of itself out of its armpit, they make absolute sense on screen together. Don't they just, Richard? Don't they just? So far, Gunn's superhero projects have consisted of characters that the general public doesn't know much about, if anything beforehand, and don't have preconceived notions or previous iterations of the characters in their heads. Everyone has an opinion about how Superman should be, as Zack Snyder could surely attest, but no one hopefully is fretting over a change to the Polka Dot Man David Dastmalchian origin story. It'll be interesting to see if that's a luxury Gunn looks forward to continuing to have as he tells more stories in the DCEU, or if he'll make the leap to tackle some of DC's A-listers. Personally, I want him to tackle Green Lantern, and I want him to tackle a Justice League movie because I think that's where his capabilities are. But make no mistake, that will be real pressure for James Gunn. One thing we can say, there wasn't much pressure doing a Guardians of the Galaxy movie. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 brought him more pressure because then we did have preconceived ideas about those characters we fell in love with, and some people weren't impressed. Personally, I like the darker aspect and avenue of dealing with Peter's father, because Peter's father is a dark, bad person. I like the film. So I don't know if he passed that test. For me, he did. Very interesting. Given the close friendship Gunn seems to develop with his actors, it's likely that we'll see Ratcatcher 2, Bloodsport, Idris Elba and King Shark, Sylvester Stallone, Steve Agee again. But will that be in the form of a sequel to the Suicide Squad? I personally don't think we will get sequels to the Suicide Squad, as in Suicide Squad films, but I think you will get HBO Max spin-offs. I think that's the way to go. What's good about that is it won't take James as much time to develop them. Maybe he won't always direct them, but he'll write the stories so he can focus on Green Lantern and Justice League, as I want him to do. Obviously, there'd be very few complaints from critics or comic book fans if Gunn came back and did another Suicide Squad movie with those characters and some new faces. There's certainly enough John Ostrander comics to pull from, and hundreds of weird and obscure characters that Gunn could make audiences fall in love with. Killer Frost, yes please, Clayface, Dr. Light, Punch and Julie, Clock King, Chemo, and so on. But perhaps the Suicide Squad will be better served through television. Exactly, Richard. Me and you think alike, mate. I'm taking you out for a pint. Going forward, as Gunn has expressed enthusiasm for what television offers him as a storyteller, and the Suicide Squad plays around with an episodic format by way of its structure and title cards. And considering the box office, maybe, it would be for the best for these spin-offs to go on HBO Max. While the outcome of Peacemaker will likely be the deciding factor, it seems like HBO Max will be a good home for DC projects that aren't necessarily destined to be blockbusters. As the entertainment industry rapidly shifts, in part because of the pandemic, in part because of the streaming wave that was already in the works, it makes sense for films like Batgirl and Blue Beetle to be smaller, budgeted HBO Max exclusives. And hopefully, with box office no longer serving as the chief concern, John Campea, another journalist just fried you as well. With box office not being the prime concern. Does he know nothing about films? A Hollywood Reporter journalist as well, Mr. Campea. More directors will be able to take risks and have creative freedom with their projects. Gunn could certainly fit into the world of 80 to 100 million DC passion projects, tackling characters like Detective Chimp, Blue Devil, or Deadman. But as Gunn recently told The Hollywood Reporter, he likes making big movies, and whether you watch The Suicide Squad at home or in theatres, the film shot in IMAX definitely feels like a big movie. So on the bigger side of things, not that Gunn couldn't make an amazing 200 million Blue Devil movie, because he definitely could. There could certainly be more Harley Quinn in his future. I think Harley Quinn and Gotham City Sirens should also be on HBO Max. There have been rumblings of a Gotham City Sirens film since Suicide Squad 2016. David Ayer was originally set to do it, and after Birds of Prey and the fantabulous emancipation of one Harley Quinn, there was online buzz about Kathy Yan taking on the project. From who? You mean Harley Quinn stands? Nah. Where are we? There was online buzz about Kathy Yan taking on the project, but Gunn may be the one to actually bring it to fruition. Yeah, Kathy Yan's finished with Warner Brothers, so forget that. In that same chat with The Hollywood Reporter, Gunn said that he felt he had a knack of writing Harley Quinn, and that Margot Robbie was his favourite actress he's worked with. Wow. I mean, you shouldn't say that with all the actresses you've worked with, James. Come on. Robbie expressed similar enthusiasm for Gunn at the premiere. Another team-up between the two seems like the natural answer. But Margot Robbie, at the premiere or in other interviews, has said that she feels Harley needs a rest. Then, obviously, after she was told off by the studio, she says she's ready to play Harley at any time. Something's going on there, and we're just going to have to wait what it is that's actually going on. I do think there's issues between her and the studio, considering what happened with her produced Birds of Prey movie. Gotham City Sirens, created by Paul Dini and Gilliam March, features Harley, Poison Ivy and Catwoman, who with the help of the Riddler take on Hush, although Catwoman and the Riddler will be appearing in non-DCEU film, The Batman. Well, Richard, it is DCEU, but it's DCEU Earth 2. portrayed by Zoe Kravitz and Paul Dano, respectively. The multiverse would allow for other iterations of those characters to appear within the DCEU. Fans have been waiting for a long time to see Harley and Ivy's romance on screen, and Gunn, so adept at telling unexpected love stories, could be the director for the job. Call it wishful thinking, but perhaps Gunn could even manage to get Ben Affleck back for a small role as Batman, why not? And a larger role as Hush. Given that the opportunity would be something out of Affleck's wheelhouse, Gunn recently said he'd be willing to take a stab at a Batman film if Matt Reeves wasn't already doing one. So if not Batman, Gotham is at least on the table. But the thing is as well, we have an Earth 2 Batman, but we don't necessarily have an Earth 1 Batman movie in development, so maybe James could also work on that. If there is any lingering concern about Gunn being able to draw in theatrical audiences with DC's lesser known characters, then the combination of Harley, Ivy, Catwoman and maybe Batman alongside a few familiar Gotham rogues like the recent Punchline would certainly be a draw. Another possibility to keep on the back burner of potential projects is Justice League. Yeah, as I just said, I know, but hear it out. While a new film is likely a way off, Gunn recently responded to CNA's Genevieve Lowe about a potential Justice League versus Suicide Squad film. Now this is something I was talking about. This is something I would have done for phase 1 of the DCEU. As I say, you've put the Suicide Squad movie in the middle of Zack's arc, and it has no relevance. This would have been a good idea. That confrontation is also the basis for Rocksteady's upcoming video game, Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, and comic companies do love synergy between brands. Gunn admitted it wasn't a bad idea before saying that he'd have to figure out who's on the Justice League first, noting the complicated nature of who's still playing which roles, which it certainly wouldn't be the Justice League narrative that Snyder set up. Those characters are too great to never see come together again, and a movie told through the Suicide Squad perspective rather than the Justice League, that would also allow Gunn to tap into the more irreverent side of DC, as well as his penchant for underdogs. Where else are we ever going to see the Condiment King face off against Batman, Harley Quinn fight Wonder Woman, wow, or a rematch between Bloodsport and Superman? Oh my god, the hairs on the back of my neck that I forgot to shave off are standing on edge already thinking about it. Whatever Gunn chooses to do next in the DCEU, there's no doubt that it will be an additive to the franchise and bring forth characters and concepts many comic fans never imagined they'd seen on screen. We already got Starro in Gunn's first DCEU film, so it's only going to get bigger, weirder from there. Creatively speaking, the Suicide Squad feels like round 2 of the DCEU, one free from limitations and studio cuts, and all in on celebrating every character in DC's vast pantheon of characters from Batman to Ratcatcher 2 with equal significance. I'd marry Ratcatcher 2 now if I could. No, not you, Daniela, don't worry. You and your partner are safe. Actually, Ratcatcher 2, I love that character. That is a brilliant article by Richard Newby. Well done, Richard. Isn't it refreshing to read the words of a journalist who seems passionate about these DC characters and say it how it is and say it right and proper, rather than saying the same old thing again and again and just waiting for some super chats. Well done, Richard. Really good article. What do you think James Gunn will do next? What kind of movie do you think he'll do next? I think his Suicide Squad stuff will spin off on HBO Max. I definitely think they're tapping him to do Justice League, maybe Justice League versus the Suicide Squad. Interesting, maybe not. And Green Lantern Corps, and I've said this before, Robert Downey Jr. as an older Hal Jordan and a younger John Stewart, in his training. It would be absolutely fantastic. So, yeah, let me know in the comments below what you want him to do. You know what I want him to do. James Gunn's The Suicide Squad was a great movie. I have been balanced with my commentary about the box office, but I genuinely enjoyed the movie. Michael Keaton Teases' first shot of Batman in the Flash movie is great. Yes, Michael Keaton has been promoting his latest project, but he's not talking about his latest project very much. He can't help himself but ooze enthusiasm and get the hype train full of charcoal and steam and tell us and hype and tease Andy Muschietti Flash movie. Michael Keaton says that the first scene of his Batman in Andy Muschietti's The Flash is great and reminiscent to some degree of Tim Burton. That is the hugest compliment he, as an actor, an iconic legendary actor, can pay to director Andy Muschietti, that he's made his first scene as Batman be reminiscent of Tim Burton. That's a great compliment from Michael Keaton to Andy Muschietti. This is by Nico Marone of Screen Rant. Michael Keaton revealed that he believes that the first shot of his Batman in The Flash will be immensely satisfying to fans of Tim Burton's 1989 film. Keaton originally played the role of the Dark Knight in Burton's Batman opposite Jack Nicholson's Joker and reprised the role in 1992 Batman Returns. Keaton's portrayal is beloved and helped introduce a new generation to the character and the comics. After months of rumours, it was finally confirmed in April that Keaton would be reprising his version of Batman for Andy Muschietti's take on The Flash, opposite Ezra Miller in the eponymous role and Ben Affleck's Batman, as well as Sasha Calle as Supergirl. Before we go on with this article, because I don't know if it covers it or not, he's also been comparing the film to his film Multiplicity. Do you remember the awesome Multiplicity? It was a fun comedy, right? Loads of versions of different characters. And he says he was hinting about having to fight himself. So the question I want you to answer also in the comments below, what version of Batman or Bruce Wayne is Tim Burton's Batman gonna have to face? Is it Christian Bale? Please. Is it Batfleck? Will they meet? This is a very, very exciting component and I can't wait to see it on an IMAX screen. Anyway, we continue. The Flash will see Miller's Barry Allen attempt to travel back in time to prevent his mother's murder, leading to dire consequences for the timeline. The film will feature elements of Flashpoint's storyline from the DC Comics, explaining why the Flash will encounter different versions of familiar superheroes in the comics. The events of Flashpoint see Barry Allen waking up in a radically different timeline to his own, one where his mother never died. In this new timeline, Bruce Wayne was killed instead of his parents, causing his father to become Batman and his mother to become the Joker. It's a great graphic novel, isn't it? Speaking to Collider, Keaton revealed that slipping back into the role of the Batman was weirdly ironically easy, and he felt emotional in doing so. However, most interesting is that Keaton teased that the first shot of his version of Batman is great, in his opinion, both in terms of imagery and in honouring Burton's original film. You can read Keaton's complete statement below, which we will very shortly. I think Andy Muschietti is another great director like Zack Snyder who can give you great imagery. We've seen it in his It movies as well. So I have great faith in those terms as a director of Andy Muschietti. It was weirdly and ironically easy, a little bit emotional, just a rush of memories without giving anything away, which I can't basically. The first shot, not of the entire movie, but let's say the introduction of Batman is so good that when we walked on and started talking about a couple of shots and the angles, I went, wow, this is big, this is great. I don't even mean for me, just the imagery. It's great and reminiscent to some degree of Tim Burton. Tim Burton and Michael Keaton have had a 30+ year friendship and working relationship in the industry. It's one of the great Hollywood partnerships, if you ask me. In many ways, Burton's Batman and Keaton's portrayal of the character helped lay the groundwork for the modern superhero film. Understandably, there was a great deal of excitement around the actor's addition to The Flash. Keaton too is excited, evidenced by his admission that he felt a little bit emotional when he donned the cowl again. It was previously revealed that both Keaton's version of the Batmobile and Batcape would appear in the film. Still, it's good to hear that The Flash will pay subtle homage to the '89 film on a cinematic level as well. It's currently unclear how large a role Keaton will have in The Flash. Still, it's generally understood that the film won't acknowledge events of Batman Forever or Batman and Robin, considering that Batman was played by different actors, Val Kilmer and George Clooney, respectively. Hopefully, Keaton's appearance will be significant rather than a throwaway scene. It's not a throwaway scene. Used to induce nostalgia, that's not the point of this. He plays a big role, as Andy's already told us. It's entirely possible, though, that Keaton's older Batman could be the Thomas Wayne version. It looks like he is, but don't discount Thomas Wayne being in this. Keeping in line with Flashpoint storyline, and could be an exciting way of twisting the Batman mythos to suit the modern film audiences. We'll have to wait to find out when The Flash releases in 2022. But if Keaton is right, then they surely won't be disappointed. We won't be disappointed. This is the movie I wept myself about when Andy and Barbara were talking about this at DC Fandom last year. We're going to reboot the universe. Everything will be remembered. Nothing will be forgotten. The DCEU starts again. It will be a more connective franchise. This is what we want. This is what I was saying to you earlier or last week when I was talking about the Suicide Squad. Don't worry about its performance. It makes no difference. The Suicide Squad's a great movie, but it makes no difference how it performs. They have a plan. They're going to make this a more vibrant franchise, and everyone should be excited for that. But hearing Michael Keaton say he felt emotional, that it's iconic, it felt like Tim Burton's Batman, the imagery is great. Well done, Andy Muschietti, and you just got one of the biggest compliments from one of the most iconic actors in the history of Hollywood. Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, the sequel to the most successful DCEU movie, and again directed by James Gunn, the most successful DCEU directors, the only one to have $1 billion movie. Fact. Well, we have an article here about his Black Manta. Aquaman 2 script is better than the first movie, says villain actor. Let's get this right, actor Yahya Abdul-Mateen II, who will reprise his role as Black Manta in Aquaman 2, he was great in the first film, says that the sequel script is better than the original films. It's not very fair on the people who wrote the first film, though. I really like the first film. By Saeed Fadullah Hassani of Screen Rant. Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, actor Yahya Abdul-Mateen II says the movie's script is superior to Aquaman's. After a handful of cameos in multiple DCEU projects, Jason Momoa was officially introduced as the franchise's Aquaman in the divisive 2017 film Justice League. Soon after, Momoa led a movie of his own, helmed by The Conjuring's James Wan, which proved to be a major box office blockbuster, netting a gross worldwide total of $1.1 billion. After the success of the 2018 Aquaman, a sequel was a no-brainer for Warner Brothers. However, Wan was initially apprehensive about rushing the next film, but ultimately talks materialised and the production is now officially in full swing in London. Titled Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, Wan's follow-up to the DCEU's underwater hit, is being marketed as a bigger and better version of the original feature. Aquaman 2 expands the world building of the first film. Aside from the bringing back the original ensemble, Momoa's Arthur Curry, Amber Heard's Mira, and Patrick Wilson's Orm, it also introduces new additions such as Pilu Abzek, undisclosed character. At the moment, other plot specifics for Aquaman 2 are slim, although it has been suggested that the movie is a tad darker and narratively deeper than its joyful predecessor. Here's the thing. Any writer and director of their suits knows that the second movie has to be your Dark Knight and your Empire Strikes Back. Simple as that. This is the mistake that Patty Jenkins made with Wonder Woman 84. And if you think about, what's the film called again? Birds of Prey and the Fantabulous Emancipation of One Harley Quinn. That was Harley's second movie. That should have been a little bit darker. That should have left us on the edge of our seats, and it didn't. In a recent conversation with The Hollywood Reporter, actor Yahya Abdul-Mateen II, who plays a significant role as the villainous Black Manta in the forthcoming film, suggested that the script for Aquaman 2 is better than the original. Speaking specifically about his character's arc, Abdul-Mateen II said that the film only set up the intentions of Black Manta. Still, the upcoming one puts him directly under the spotlight, fleshing out all of his aspects and shades. Apart from that, Aquaman 2 also offers other actors a chance to shine, offering them some moments of quality storytelling. Read what Abdul-Mateen II said below. I think the script is better than it was in the first one. It gives the actors a lot of good storytelling moments, he explains. In Aquaman, we just got a small introduction to Black Manta and to some of his motivations. In this one, I get to exercise and breathe a little bit more. I'm showing some different colours with this one. I loved his performance as Black Manta in the first film. I can't wait to see a lot more of this actor playing this iconic role. He's a great actor, he's an up-and-comer. He's absolutely sensational. He's done a big interview for the Hollywood Reporter. You should go check that out. Whether or not is Aquaman's 2 script better than the 2018 movie is something fans and critics would only know when the movie hits theatres on December the 16th, 2022. But one thing is for sure, the story will be decidedly different from the previous one. The reason for that is, this time around Momoa has himself contributed to the screenplay. However, the script has still primarily been penned by Aquaman's veteran scribe, David Leslie Johnson McGoldrick. Additionally, Aquaman 2 hasn't received any input from Jeff Johns and Will Bill, who had co-written the original screenplay. That's very interesting, and we know that Jeff Johns likes DC and was very offended by Snyder's take on the DC. So this one, though, is going to be darker, so very interesting. Given this shake-up at the creative end, it makes sense for Aquaman 2 to be a different story than Aquaman. So far, all the actors are very confident about the new script, and the setting and the workout videos have been teased. All points towards a bright future for Aquaman 2. Of course, right now, it's too early to predict how the movie would fare, but hopefully things will become clear once fans start pouring out reactions to the film's BTS shots, teasers and spoilers, which will inevitably arrive soon. It's interesting because I think this film's been shooting for a month and a half, 2 months. I don't know if we're going to have a trailer at Fandome for this movie. And I'll tell you something about James Gunn. He doesn't like to rush trailers. If you remember what happened with the first movie's trailer, he's a perfectionist. So we may not see too much of anything. We may, I don't know. We're going to get a lot of chat about this film. I don't know about any actual scenes or trailers. I'd love to see one. But James is someone who wants things to be perfect, so I wouldn't be frustrated if we don't see a trailer at DC Fandome. If we do, I'll be absolutely hyped. I think they would have done enough by then to give us a little teaser. Not much, maybe 30 seconds. I think we would all be happy at that. Now, it's interesting, I think James Wan's the one who's changed up the people he wanted to write this movie, and I think that's interesting. He wanted a darker movie. Which is interesting, and the decision, he was going to have an HBO Max spin-off or another movie based on the first movie, and it didn't happen. But maybe what he was going to do in that spin-off will be involved in this movie. We'll have to wait and see. Oh, David Ayer, I do love you, and he's being very, very blatant and honest about what happened to him with the production and filming of the first Suicide Squad movie, the theatrical cut of what I actually like that film. But he's done a little cartoon here on Twitter, and it's actually very, very interesting. Let me read it out to you. So this is how it is. This is what it looks like. So we're going to read it out. So I need to zoom in a bit. I made this. So we go to the next panel. I've taken your work and modified it with minimal effort. Can I get some credit? No. So he's being very, very blatant now. I believe we are very close to an announcement of the green lighting of the Ayer cut, of David Ayer's version of the Suicide Squad. I've thought this for some time, and I think a lot of people within the movement feel the same way as well. Why have they changed their minds? I think they've changed their minds because they realise we are within a multiverse and there should be a capacity for all these different versions to live. And they know that the previous leaders of the studio did David dirty, and there is a fandom. There are people who are willing to pay for this movie to subscribe to HBO Max and watch it if that's how they're going to do it. Very, very interesting. I would be even happier if we could just have a straight to DVD, Blu-ray, 4K release of this film, because I don't have access to HBO bloody Max, and there's no other way of watching it. So I will just take the Blu-ray and the 4K right now, take my money now. But yes, you heard it here first. I believe that very, very soon you will have an announcement that the Ayer cut has been greenlit, and that is very, very exciting. Well, Ray Fisher had a very, very public, loud fight with WB over what happened with the reshoots with Joss Whedon of the 2017 Justice League, Henry Cavill has been fighting a very different war, a silent war from behind the scenes. He started off slightly loud by getting the director of Mission Impossible Fallout to help him come up with a script. They pitched it to Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers said no straight away. It was clear they weren't ready for more Superman then, and I think that was a mistake, because Superman should always be front and center from any DC universe, whether it's comics, animation, television, and movies especially. But since then, Henry Cavill went back to the drawing board and built up a momentous, fabulous career for himself, unlike Ray Fisher again. He's now in a position, in a situation where the studio think, you know what, this is a very popular guy, people love him, he needs to play Superman again, and I believe he will. I believe in October's DC Fandom, a celebration of DC fans and these DC characters. I believe we will get an announcement of these Superman Henry Cavill cameos. Now, could we get the biggest announcement, the biggest present of all, a Henry Cavill Superman movie? Maybe that will be too good to be true, but don't discount it quite yet. I absolutely respect how Henry Cavill's fought and proven to Warner Brothers he's a worthy Superman. He's fought, he hasn't been toxic, he hasn't been negative. That's not Henry's style. Us British educated people don't just shout our mouths off. That doesn't get you anywhere. But what he's done is fantastic. And if we get some announcements at DC Fandom, I couldn't be more happier. One of the questions I get asked every day, every hour, is how long till superhero comic book live action adaptations die out and people get fed up of them? Well, not just yet, but we are kind of at near the end of the road rather than at the middle of the beginning of the road. I think the MCU will burn out before the DCEU. The DCEU is a young franchise. It's rebooting itself. It's realigning itself. It's refreshing itself. You know, the multiverse strategy will give it new energy and new excitement, both over on HBO Max and cinematically. So I think that franchise is very, very safe. But ultimately, people will get bored of it, of comic book live action, because how many different ways can you do this? Here's the problem. If people do get fed up of comic book movies and television, what has Hollywood got to replace it with? Well, nothing. They dropped everything for superheroes. They dropped everything for easy, quick money. Hollywood are in a lot of trouble. This is not the Hollywood of the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s and early noughties, where they had plenty of other stuff to interest the audiences. They've wielded us. They've wielded us of good movies. Now, if we see any dialogue in a film, we call it bad pacing. So what's going to happen when we don't have any superheroes anymore, where we claim we don't want to watch superheroes anymore? That will never happen to me, because my passion for superheroes, especially DC superheroes, is one so much. As long as they're good and they entertain me, I will never get fed up of them. I don't think we're at the end of the road quite yet, but we're certainly further down the road than we were a few years ago. It's the only thing in production, basically. And what does a studio do when all it's been selling is Coca-Cola? That's it. So just imagine people are fed up of Coca-Cola, but you haven't been selling anything else. You haven't been putting anything else on your shelves. This is what the entertainment industry in Hollywood has been doing, and it's very, very problematic for them. So yesterday I saw the first episode of What If. And what is all this Mickey taking on Twitter about what if this, what if that? I can't believe that's caught on. Really, really funny. Anyway, I watched What If's first episode and I thought I was going to hate it. But it turned out I actually really enjoyed Captain Carter. I think the thing that stood up to me, yes, she's a strong woman, but her love for Steve is still there. She respects him. She's good to him. She wants to be with him. She wants to fight in battle with him. And I think this was the beautiful thing about it. I like the fact that Howard Stark builds this kind of Iron Man kind of thing for Steve Rogers. Nearly forgot his name. Wow. How can I just forget his name? I just said his name anyway. Yeah, so Steve Rogers gets his kind of Iron Man costume because it's all set in the Second World War, of course. Look, at first when I saw the trailer, I didn't like the animation, but I must admit the animation has grown on me. The action sequences are great. I thought it was really, really good. So I'm looking forward to seeing next week's episode as well. And I'd love to know in the comments below what you thought of What If. Listen, I think it's a great idea by Fake to do this, but basically it's just another educational tour into the multiverse, because he believes you, the consumer, don't get the multiverse. And he's a little bit scared, even though he wants to do the multiverse, he's a little bit scared you're not going to understand it. That's why the finale of Loki was literally another let's tell them in layman's terms what the multiverse is. And we spent 50 minutes of having that explained to us like we were children feeding off our mother, and it was really ridiculous. But I do like What If, and I will be watching the other episodes. I do think it's a good idea. I think the animation is great. I think the writing is great. And I would love to know what you thought of What If. This has been Thursday's edition of the Movies TV Mad Daily. I'm Mick, your host with the most. Just ask your girlfriends and your wives, and I will see you in the next video. See you again soon.